All right, so you ready to step back in time? Today we're getting into the nitty-gritty of what it really took to run a kingdom, because we're talking King Solomon.
Everyone knows Solomon, right?
Right.
Famous for wisdom, all that gold.
Exactly. But we're going deeper.
We are going way deeper. We're talking about the officials, the systems, even like how they build stuff. The stuff you usually skip over in 1 Kings chapters 4 through 6.
It's like we're ditching the textbook and getting a backstage pass to Solomon's world. This is going to be good.
Buckle up, because 1 Kings 4.26, it throws a whole list at you. Solomon's inner circle, the officials. You might think, okay, names. But this is where it gets juicy, right?
Yeah, it's like you can read about Roman emperors, but it's different from being a fly on the wall when they're making deals.
Yeah. Exactly. Power dynamics. Who's who? And one thing pops up right away. Family. It wasn't just about being smart or whatever. It's who your dad was.
Oh, nepotism. I knew it. It never changes.
Right. Like Azariah, he's in charge of the priests. It's his dad. Zadok, the priest. Then there's Benaiah, runs the army. And his father, Jehoiada.
Connections. Makes you wonder if even back then, getting ahead was all about who you knew, not what you knew.
And think of those family gatherings. But it's more than just gossip. It shows how they held on to power back then, you know?
Passing it down through the generations makes sense. But man, talk about pressure. You wouldn't want to be that son who messes things up. But this list, it's not just priests and generals.
Oh, good catch. There's Azariah, different one. He's over those district deputies we'll talk about. Then there's Zabud. He's called Solomon's friend, basically. The trusted advisor.
The right-hand man?
Right. They don't lead armies, but they keep the kingdom running.
Kind of like today. We see this celebrity CEO, but what about the people who, make the stuff happen? Logistics, the day-to-day grind.
Exactly. Unsung heroes. And speaking of, let's talk about those district deputies. 1 Kings 4.7:19. Their job, keep everyone in the royal court fed every day, all year round.
Wait, hold up. 12 districts.
Right.
Each supplying a month's worth of food. The spreadsheets, can you imagine in those times?
Monumental. And we're not talking about a small gathering here. This is Solomon's court. The text makes it clear there are a lot of mouths to feed. We're talking a logistical masterpiece just to keep things running.
Must have been intense, and here's where it gets interesting. It casually mentions Solomon married off some of his daughters to these deputies. Strategy, keeping them in line. Or was it, ancient world romance?
$1 million question. It could be power moves, right? Cement those alliances, marriage contracts, and all that. But maybe some of them, maybe love blossomed. History is full of surprises.
I'd watch that reality show, Palace Intrigue, love triangles, but it shows you, even back then, power, family, romance, it was all mixed up together.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just about grain and taxes. It was about people, relationships. And those relationships, sometimes, they got messy.
A human element. It's what makes history so fascinating, really.
And speaking of messy, let's talk about Solomon's famous wealth. It was all, sunshine and rainbows. Because 1 Kings 4.2028, it paints this picture, this really idyllic picture of how prosperous Solomon's reign was. I mean, they actually compare the number of people in Judah and Israel to the sand on the seashore. That's a lot.
They were eating, drinking, and rejoicing. That's straight from the text. Sounds like one big party. But something tells me there's a flip side.
Always a flip side. See, the text, it focuses on the abundance, the overflowing granaries, all that. But archaeology, other historical stuff, it suggests things were a bit more, let's say, complicated. This prosperity, it might not have reached everyone's doorstep.
So not everyone was living the good life, like Solomon and his buddies.
Exactly. Social stratification, different levels of, well, let's be honest, wealth and power. We know Solomon enjoyed the finer things and that lifestyle. It takes resources, often from those who don't have as much.
A good reminder that even when times are good, not everyone gets a slice of the pie. But still, that list of provisions in 1 Kings, talk about mind-blowing. They list out his daily food requirements, and it's like a lot-tea.
Oh, it's insane, right? Like a shopping list for a giant feast, but every single day. 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal. Think of the wheat fields, the farmers. And the meat, oh man. 10 fattened oxen, 20 pasture-fed oxen, 100 sheep.
Okay, pause. 100 sheep every day. That's more livestock than I see in a year. And someone had to manage all that, right? We talked about those district deputies supplying the court. It wasn't just taxes. It was a massive supply chain. Food had to move constantly from all over to Solomon's table.
A constant flow.
Yeah.
And don't forget the trade network Solomon controlled. We're talking luxury goods, raw materials, all coming in from everywhere. You need serious logistical skills, resource management, maybe some ancient accounting to keep that going.
Makes you think, We always hear about Solomon's wisdom, but this logistical genius, that's impressive. It takes a certain kind of mind to run a kingdom on that scale.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that brings us to Solomon's biggest project, building the temple. Talk about next-level organization.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, involved a lot of wood. So we've got Solomon, master organizer, sitting on a pile of riches. But even with all that, building the temple, something that ends up in history books, that takes more than just, good planning.
You're right, it takes people. Solomon had the vision, the skills, but he needed a workforce.
Yeah.
And that's where 1 Kings 5 gets really interesting.
Because you can't just put out a job posting, right? This is ancient world construction, mega scale.
Exactly. 1 Kings 5.13, it just throws this number at you. 30,000 forced laborers from all over Israel working on the temple.
30,000. I get cranky waiting for a concert to start. Can you imagine? In those times, trying to organize that many people, it's mind-boggling.
It really shows you the sheer size of it all, right? And it wasn't just a one-time thing. These laborers, they were sent to Lebanon, where the cedar trees were, in shifts. 10,000 a month. Housing, feeding, managing all those people. Just the logistics of it.
It's like ancient history meets extreme makeover, temple edition. And let's not forget, these weren't volunteers. Forced labor, probably away from their families, harsh conditions.
It does make you pause, right? The text focuses on the building itself, but there were real people behind it all, your lives impacted.
Suddenly, those ancient ruins, they feel different. It's not just about kings and architects anymore. It's the countless people who quarried the stone, hauled those huge timbers.
The text mentions that, actually.
Yeah.
1 Kings 5.15, it talks about 70,000 porters and 80,000 stonemasons up in the mountains getting those stones ready.
Skilled work, too, not just brute strength. Makes you wonder about their lives, the stories they would tell, the songs maybe they sang while they worked.
Every stone, every piece of wood, it's got a story behind it.
Uncovering those hidden stories, that's what makes this so fascinating. And it brings us to the temple itself. 1 Kings 6, it gets into the nitty-gritty, the design, Solomon's big vision.
And it's impressive, no doubt.
It really is. Even after all we've talked about the logistics, the sheer effort, the scale of it still blows me away. The text gets into all these details, the dimensions, what it was made of, even that they didn't use iron tools for the actual building. 1 Kings 6.7 mentions that.
Amazing, isn't it? The stones were finished at the quarry. They were that precise. Can you imagine the skill to do that? With hand tools.
Definitely makes you appreciate those ancient craftsmen. They weren't just builders, they were artists.
Creating a sacred space, the dwelling place of God. Every little thing meant something. The cedar wood, the gold, it all connected heaven and earth.
Can we talk about the cedar wood? They used it everywhere. Beams, planks, even the altar. Was it just a status symbol back then, or was it more than that?
Good eye. Cedar was prized back then. The smell, how long it lasts, insects hate it, it's practical. But it's also symbolic. Royalty, purity, the divine. Even the Ark of the Covenant, cedar wood covered in gold. It wasn't just about making the temple beautiful, it was about making it holy.
Only the best, right. And they spared no expense. 1 Kings 6 describes the decorations and, wow, gold, olive wood, those carved cherubim, it must have been something else.
This is a statement. And not just about God, but about Solomon too. His power, his wealth.
We started with the everyday stuff, Solomon's team, how they kept things running, the manpower. But we end up with these incredible stories, the people who built it all, the meaning in every brick, a king trying to create something that would last.
History's more than dates and names, right? It's about people, what they dreamed of, their challenges. And sometimes it's in those little details, who worked for who, what they built with. That's where you find the really amazing stuff.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.